Hi, everybody. Welcome to this week's Midweek at Main. Last Sunday, we had a conversation that went pretty deep. Really, this verse 13 that we've been over these last 2 weeks is a very important hinge verse in the beginning of Peter's letter. All the New Testament letters, for the most part, have an encouraging, exhorting, reminder-filled, thankful beginning. A reminder of what God has done, an encouragement to the audience, a thankfulness to the audience. And then there's counsel. There's genuine, I would say, parenting that takes place in these letters. As a matter of fact, in 1 Corinthians chapter 4, the Apostle Paul was telling the church in Corinth, for though you have countless guides, and the Greek word there for countless is like tens of thousands, though you have countless guides, you do not have many fathers. And there's a distinction that Paul draws out of that text of the relational understanding of what God ordains in people's lives, in all of our lives, for a sort of guidance that moves past just mere guidance and advice to parenting, to spiritual parenting that lets the spiritual children to let the relationships grow and flourish as they ought under the obedience and guidance. And so when that obedience and guidance is provided, the invitation for all of us, depending on our relationships in the body, is how do we learn and obey under the leadership we're given? And one of the things that's very important about this letter in 1 Peter is that Peter is writing to a group of people who are pretty far away. He's most likely in Rome, in prison, writing this letter from there to these 5 regions of churches. And he's writing to people who are Gentile and Jew. They are people who have a long history of knowledge of God in different ways, and people who know very little of God. But he writes the same intended outcomes for each one of them. No matter their background, no matter their journey, no matter their spiritual maturity, the same is holding for all of them. So in 1 Peter chapter 1, verse 13, we read this, "Therefore, preparing your minds for action and being sober-minded, set your hope fully on the grace that will be brought to you at the revelation of Jesus Christ." So this last week, I just wanted to ask some very basic questions that I know for all of us are things that we don't concentrate on enough. We just don't. Most of the things that are going on in your life have to do with perhaps how little you're looking at your heart, what you trust in, what you're really longing for most, and what you believe about God. And again, I think this is something that's hard to do because we don't slow down enough to actually point out in ourselves the things that are true. We're so afraid to do it because our culture, and even maybe some people in your past, were very condemning and harsh. And that's simply not what we're seeing in view here from Peter. Peter is telling people with a tone of tenderness, but also sincerity, to wake up, to pay very close attention. He's not condemning, but he's also not passing. He's inviting. And that invitation is filled with challenge here, and it's necessary because of what we forfeit. And this is what I want to center on today. What are you forfeiting? What are you even choosing to forfeit by not looking honestly at what you actually hope in and repent of that? What are you forfeiting? Set your hope fully on the grace that will be brought to you. Peter's trying to tell these different levels of exile experienced people how it is they are going to endure well the things they will face. And he doesn't have specifics. He doesn't need them. He's got the objective truth of what Jesus has done and what Jesus has promised. And that's it. The resurrection proved that whatever Jesus says is going to go, is going to go. And that means that whatever Jesus has promised for our futures, it's already done. So our experiences here now, if we don't believe that, if we don't hope in that, if we hope instead on being accepted among a specific group of peers or even family members, or if we concentrate our hope, our true fulfillment in our life on what people think of us in different ways, or what we accomplish, or the security we find in our financial outcomes, whatever it is that we're truly hoping in at the heart level, then for all of our individual experiences, we are choosing to forfeit the immeasurable peace and grace that comes from this letter and the invitation and challenge that comes from obeying what we're learning together. So I want to ask you these questions again very quickly here. I want to ask you, what are you doing about this week? Where do I spend my time and money with the least amount of effort? What are the unquestioned yeses in my spending of my time and my money? Things that you automatically give your time to. Is it the news? Is it just sitting around and talking to people about nothing, but avoiding ever talking to people about something? Do you avoid deep conversations? Do you avoid honest reflection? Do you avoid asking somebody for advice about your nature and your character? Again, what do you think and talk about the most? These questions were vital for us to understand and recognize where it is we actually put our hope. So for the remainder of this week, I want to invite you to press into this more than you maybe ever have before. This isn't some church gimmick. This isn't some sort of anything that is probably familiar. This is the simple trusting and believing that what Jesus says is better, and that all of your experiences, all of the things you've built up in your life can lead you to forfeit the good that God has for you because you're unwilling to trust and obey where He's leading you. So this week, for Midweek at Main, go back and check out the message from this last Sunday and actually expose your heart more honestly. Maybe even do this with a couple of other people, but what is most true about what you set your hope in, and can you let it go? Do something this week that genuinely allows yourself to pull your fingers off of the old strongholds and the old idols of the heart that you have trusted for so long, and genuinely lean into what God is inviting you to trust Him with. Be changed. And let that change come from the Spirit alone. Have a great week. We'll see you this Sunday at 10 o'clock where we finish verses 14, 15, and 16. It'll be some deep water for us to tread in together. I'll see you then.